So the segment of the show that everybody's been waiting for. Right now, there is 11 minutes and 30 seconds left in the fourth quarter in Kansas City. And in what could potentially be the final game of Ben Roethlisberger's career, he's not going out with a bang. Because, what is it, 42-14 now, and he's driving. He's playing like it's the last game of his life, and it could very well be. But the rest of the playoffs, some great stories here. Where do you want to begin?
Wow. Maybe we'll just go in order, start in Cincinnati, breaking the long-time playoff streak of, losing.
Jet and Giant fans, if you think you've had it bad, Cincinnati Bengal fans, that team had not won a playoff game since 1991. That is 31 years ago. And that franchise, maybe, not quite as much as the Detroit Lions, but we're getting there. An example of futility. I mean, the only decent football being played in the state of Ohio is being played in Columbus at Ohio State. And finally, Cincinnati breaks this glass ceiling and defeats the Raiders, who's another team that had some past glory and hasn't done anything lately, by a 26-19 score. A game that they pretty much established early on, and Vegas had been playing catch-up all along and just fell short.
Yeah, I honestly think in that game it started with a couple of mistakes. The one I'll definitely point out was I think after the Bengals had gone on the board was the kickoff return. I forget which player it was by name, but he tried to make a cheeky move by receiving the ball while out of bounds to try to get the Raiders with good field position and accidentally grabbed the ball a little too soon. And instead of starting, in the middle of the field, starting at their own 3-yard line. And I think that really kind of set the tone for the game early. And it seemed like another instance of Derek Carr kind of having to play catch up for someone else's mistake.
Guys?
Yeah, I thought it was just one of those for Cincinnati as well too. In particular for Joe Burrow, it's a kind of like a survive and advance thing. I would agree. I think it was kind of I don't think it was a bad game. I think it was a good game. I think it got close down to the wire there. I'm still wondering why Derek Carr didn't throw the ball into the end zone on fourth down. But I do think it's a good win for Cincy. I thought it was a good game. Like I said, to watch, not necessarily a great game play-wise. My question for that one is, did you hear the whistle blow?
Oh, my God. It's a killer, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's the question to take away. And it's funny because I thought I heard it in the game, and then the announcers brought it up afterwards. And I just don't know why the NFL and the officials and the crew just doesn't say, we missed it.
Well, yeah, because well,
I know they can't, but we all know that they missed it. We have all the replay involved in it. And then they make up a story about how they slow down the thing so the whistle wasn't as early as it was in live action. So,
I remember many, many years ago, we're talking about the 2000 World Series and many years ago, when Roger Clemens and Mike Piazza had the bat throwing incident, and Clemens was throwing at Piazza constantly, and Joe Torre had to talk after and basically struggle to defend Clemens because he knew what Clemens did was indefensible. But he said, pitchers need to pitch inside. Yeah, right, yeah, sure. Party line, we get it. Okay? Same situation when it comes to the officiating in any league. Sometimes they do admit to it. Sometimes we screwed up. But the problem is, with so much riding on the outcome of every game, whether it's incentives, and I'm just talking about among players within the league, the standings, revenue, you name it, okay? With so much riding on every game, I haven't even started with the gambling. And the leagues have finally acknowledged the fact that people do bet on these games. So with all that riding on it, you can't just say, oh, we screwed up. Because if somebody admits to that, remember the guy who scored an own goal for Colombia?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it would not be pretty.
Well, all I'll say about that whistle play is just, anybody, I mean, whether you played or even if you just watch sports for a while, when the whistle blows, the play is over. So in terms of the Raiders defense, if they do hear a whistle, they're probably stopping in their tracks, which it looks like the one corner did to leave the receiver open. I think it was Boyd. But the problem is too, if they say, okay, yeah, we blew the whistle accidentally because he didn't step out of bounds when he was releasing the ball, it was, a good play. It's just that if they had blown the whistle, then you're taking it away from the Bengals on the other side. So, it's a lose-lose. You hate that it happens, but it seems like it happens. There's always one huge mistake made by the officials in the playoffs every year, if not more.
I'm begging these officials, man. They got to figure out how to play the Madden video game. They got to figure out how to, you study down these. It really shouldn't be that hard to officiate a game to where, you make some of the most simplest errors during playoffs. And the one that sticks out of my mind is the Saints-Rams one a couple of years ago where there was clear pass interference. I think it was helmet to helmet as well. And neither of those flags got thrown. And the Rams ended up winning that game and going to the Super Bowl. Like it should have been the Saints game. And that play you're talking about there too from yesterday, it was going to be a touchdown 99%, either way. Even if the whistle doesn't blow, it was pretty much in the receiver's hands. A great throw by Burrow. He had a lot of them. He was averaging 7 yards per attempt. Great passer rating at 110. So, that's really not the issue there. But it's just infuriating because it just feels like it gets worse and worse. And especially when games are on the line, it just feels like, you really can't talk about games without having to talk about the refereeing and the call they missed or, just something weird going on, like in the Cowboys game today, where that was not necessarily on the refereeing, but it was just a weird incident.
Well, I think that the college football game, I think, has it right, where they review every turnover and every scoring play. I think that should be, because in that regard, in the Cincy game, if they're going to review, yeah, but then they said they can't review a whistle.
Well,
so I mean,
the question was brought up by a CBS commentator, I forget either in studio or at the game, was whether or not the league office got the footage with audio. Now, you would expect, and that if you're running it back and forth, you're not necessarily paying attention to the audio, which it basically exposes something else. This is one of those things that we never planned for this, but we have to put something in the rules, or at least in the procedure. Next time, must be listening to the audio.
I was going to say, because in the rules, blowing the play is dead. So, because at least from what we saw, the whistle was blown before it was in the receiver's hands. So clearly that touchdown shouldn't have counted. And it was a game changer. Not that I don't think the Raiders could have won in the end, but, it gave them another hill time and just add on to, as you said, Derek Carr and the offense, their job, because especially going up against Cincinnati defense, Carr wasn't immune from mistakes. He turned the ball early in the game, following a strict sack. He had struggle pushing the ball down the field. But, it's kind of just things like that are out of your control that really, I thought, played a big factor in Saturday's game.
Well, in a 7-point game, you don't get the touchdown there, they're going to kick the field goal. They're only up by 3. So when the Raiders are driving at the end of the game, they don't have to get a touchdown. They just need to get a field goal to put the game into overtime. So I think that's the big play. It's really like a 4-point swing there, right? And that changes the dynamic of the game.
Well, yeah, and not only that, but to those who care in the betting world, the 7-point lead instead of 4. Well, no, it would be 3 at that point. I think the line for most of the week was around 5 to 6 points. So you got a lot of people, I'm sure, unhappy with that.
Did you take the over on that? Did you take the under?
I didn't play over under, but with any call the officials make nowadays, I don't understand why it seems like they're so quick to, blow a play dead when it could be so close like that. I feel like in, times of review, you might as well let them play it out. And then, you can always review it after something like stepping out of bounds or something. But when you blow it early like that, then, you run into these incidents. And then in terms of just, the game itself, aside from the referees, am I the only one who was just waiting for, the Raiders to commit to, either doubling Chase or making them go somewhere else? It just felt like it was pitch and catch all day. And I mean, if I'm a Raiders fan, I'm pulling my hair out, because at least make Higgins, make Boyd. I know Uzama had a few big plays here and there, but
he did.
Make them do it, every play and not Chase. I mean, I know he's going to get his here and there, but
yeah, Jamar Chase finished that game 9 receptions, 116 yards, including 3 15-plus yard passes from Burrow.
Yeah, just crazy. I'm sure. I'm not sure who they'll be matched up with next week. I guess it would be Tennessee. But I feel like whoever they're playing is gonna set up a defensive game plan to take him out of the game, because I think it'll throw Burrow off his rhythm a little too, having to rely on somebody else if they're successful in that type of game plan.
Okay, so we proceed to the New England Patriots and the Buffalo Bills. And first of all, if you are a bookie, if you are DraftKings, if you are any of these other betting agencies, you cleaned up, because a lot of money was riding in the New England Patriots because of the New England Patriots. And the Buffalo Bills are the Buffalo Bills. But the Buffalo Bills have won 2 division titles in a row, and the New England Patriots have not been the same since Tom Brady left. We know all those wonderful things. Patriots made a good show of it during the regular season. Did not do so yesterday. 47-17. And this was a type of thing, if you're a Bills fan, and we have a friend who works in the athletic communications office who's from there.
And went to the game, too, on a hunch.
Yeah, on a hunch, a hell of a hunch.
Oh, yes.
Because that was 30 years almost since the Boy I Love Losing Super Bowls era of futility. Again, kind of like the Bengals, but the team that has been in your way for years on end, and you just get the opportunity not just to beat them, but to destroy them.
Oh, yes.
And the Bills fans ate it up.
That man was an exorcism of demons, I thought, right there, just on the Bills front, and just all their struggles in the past, especially against New England team. And I just felt like for the rest of the league, just on how much New England has hurt them, just finally, giving them a taste of their own medicine in that sense. And talking about betting, the line entering the game, the spread was -4, and the over-under was at 43.5 points. The Bills alone did enough to cover the over-under, finishing with 7 points on what was a tremendous statement game from them. Statement game from Josh Allen, especially 21 of 25, 308 yards and 3 touchdowns. Cool.
I also thought it was his legs as well too. I don't know what he rushed for, but it seemed like when they needed a big play, he was able to run, and he just looked like a man child out on the field there. It was almost like he was like a varsity kid playing in the JV game.
Yeah.
When he was playing, it really was like, it was really fun to watch him go. He is a dynamic player.
He was, The scariest part to me was just his targets. Okay, from 10 to 19 yards out, he went 6 for 6 for 98 yards, 3 of his touchdowns. 20-yard passes, 4 for 4, 141 yards, and a touchdown. So you're looking at just about 250 yards almost, just on 10 to 20 plus yard passes alone. Ridiculous numbers.
Well, I think the most surprising thing is, you see the regular season matchups between these two, and you figure it's going to be another freezing cold game up in Buffalo, maybe a little unsure heading into the game if snow is going to be a factor. But I think everybody just kind of assumed you're going to get pretty hard-nosed defense from both sides, contributing to a low-scoring game. And, I mean, the Patriots' defense was nowhere to be found. And then, you get into a track meet with Buffalo with a rookie quarterback in his first playoff game. I think everybody, once they saw the Bills kind of get going early, they knew it was going to be trouble from there on.
Yeah. Yeah, and the cold definitely came, no question about that. They said it was -6, factoring the wind chill. The problem was that I think the big difference was, look at game 1 and look at this game. Wind was a big factor in the first game these two teams played against. That's why the Patriots ran 99% of the time. Here, there was really no wind to contend about. It was just cold and no snow from what I can remember. So, yeah, it was, but the offense was able to lit it up, and there was just a tremendous difference maker in that. It was Allen using his legs, the receivers really stepping up and just cooking England.
Yeah, and I think, go on.
I just thought Mac Jones had no compliments on the offensive end. I mean, he's still a young quarterback. I don't know where he's going to go as a player.
Yeah,
I don't love him. I don't hate him. But they just didn't have any threats. They don't have anybody that seems like they're running downhill, that tilts the field.
Yeah.
There was nothing for the Bills to be concerned about.
Yeah, run game wasn't there yesterday. Harris, Stevenson, they were big factors in the win. Didn't really do anything. Harris finished with 30 yards. And really outside of Kendrick Bourne, can't really recall anyone else stepping up. Jacoby Myers as well, I guess. He finished with 40 yards. But really, Kendrick Bourne was the one receiver I thought, that was there for Mac Jones. There was nothing for him available, and it's not like he was able to do much himself anyway, with how he was playing, especially that first quarter.
Well, you talk about the lack of the run game from New England, but I think a big thing for, I don't want to say a turnaround for this Buffalo team, because I think everybody knew they were going to be good this season, but at times early on, they had some troubles, some stumbles and whatnot, but it seems like Devin Singletary has been able to kind of really get an established run game outside of Josh Allen for this Bills team. And that, I think, if I was someone who had to, compete against the Bills is scary, because you're always worried about, Allen to Diggs, Allen to Knox, a handful of the other guys. And then you got to worry about Allen's legs. But now if you got to worry about, Devin Singletary putting up, about 80 yards at times, he had
83.
Yeah, he had over 80 in the playoff game. I know it was the Jets, but over 80 that last game. And then Atlanta before that, he was over 100. So, he's kind of been on a little bit of a run here, and it makes everything much easier for that Buffalo offense, and especially for Josh Allen, because now his threat of running is even greater.
Yeah, so. For Singletary too, he's really good at getting first downs or getting the end zone. Because just going back to yesterday's game, those 16 carries, 9 of them were either for first or for a touchdown. So he's just such a threat in that he's so explosive coming out the backfield. And by the time you catch up to him, he's already gotten 7-8 yards on you, just about. And he has 16 carries, put up 83 yards. Half of that, too, coming after contact. So he's definitely added a dimension to this Bills offense, which is already so explosive. Dawson Knox, tight end, stepping up. Stephon Diggs, the two of them played virtually, I think, every snap in yesterday's game. Yeah.
And one more thing I'll add to just quick. You bring up Dawson Knox. I think it's time we put some respect on his name. I think he's one of the top tight ends in this league. I don't know how you guys feel about him, but it seems like he's been. I mean, I know Stephon Diggs is up there in Buffalo, putting up big numbers and getting to all pro teams and whatnot. But Dawson Knox really seems like another safety blanket, if you will, for Josh Allen. And it always seems like in big games he has a touchdown or two, as he did just last night.
Yeah, statistically, it doesn't really jump out that much. In the regular season alone, he had 71 targets, 587 receiving yards, which are both good for top 20, so it's not for nothing, right? But I think his greatest strength is, I think, as you said, being that safety blanket, especially in the red zone. He had 9 receiving touchdowns, which was tied for first during the regular season amongst tight ends. So he's someone who's reliable in that front. And like I said, to me, he doesn't really have, I think, the skill. He's not on the same level as Mark Andrews, Kelsey, Gronk, but he's definitely, I think, around there, especially in the postseason as we move further and further into it. He's going to be a factor for defenses to have to shut him down along with Stephon Diggs. Greg.
Are the Bills, and I think he's in, as a tight end, he gets the advantage of that play action. They're the ones that hit the most. They ran so well yesterday that I think he gets some of those things, and he does it really well. So he fits that role perfectly. The question, I think, is, are the Bills a real contender for the AFC this year?
Well, I'll jump in, and I believe if the result holds in Kansas City,
it will.
Yeah.
Well, I think it might
be 48.
42-21 right now. Kansas City way.
Buffalo should be going to Kansas City for that next game, and I think, I've heard a lot all off during the regular season and even coming into the season that Buffalo has kind of built their team to beat the Chiefs, and we saw them do it in the regular season. So I think it's a matchup that they like, and it's really going to be interesting to see the rematch because, we're watching Kansas City right now put up a bunch of points. We just saw Buffalo last night put up a bunch of points. So it's going to be, I think, which defense can get more stops maybe.
Yeah.
And I think even though Kansas City's defense has looked really good at times throughout this season, I think Buffalo's defense is kind of riding a little bit of a hot streak here. I think holding New England to, that low rushing, they've been pretty great on the ground this season, and holding them to, I'm not exactly sure what it was, but I think it was around like 50, 60 yards on the ground. That's a pretty dominant performance, from that defense. And I think if you're Buffalo, you like the matchup. I think Tennessee, as surprising as it may sound, it might have been a tougher matchup for a team like Buffalo.
No, I get that. For Buffalo too, it helps. They're not going to be facing Tennessee, especially with a looming Derrick Henry likely coming back next week, which just changes the game completely. Because Tennessee's looked real good without him, and they looked really good with him. So him coming back definitely adds another layer that Cincinnati is likely going to have to strategize against, and is going to be tough to stop because, even a Derrick Henry who probably won't be at 100%, who's probably going to be 7 still, and among one of the most dangerous players in the league. It took so long just for another running back, and it was Jonathan Taylor, to catch up to him in the rushing yard total. He'd been gone 6 or 7 weeks. So, yeah, Tennessee definitely watching, this weekend closely. And, these games, too, just to see, what the other squads are doing. Really good on both ends. It's going to definitely be a fun one next week, Greg.
It'll be interesting to see if the Bills can put the long drives together like they were last night, where they put some drives together, they 7-8 plays down the field, 60-70 yards. If they can do that and keep Kansas City's offense off the field, and keep it like a fast game in a way. Do you know what I'm saying? Where the clock is, you run the rock and you spin that clock and you can keep Mahomes off the field. Because what I think Kansas City does, and what their defense gets a little, probably too much credit for, is they start scoring early like they are right now, and then you got to play catch up, and then it's really easy to play defense that way. Because not many teams can keep pace with them. So if you can grind on Kansas City and force them to play long stretches of defense, keep that offense off the field, I think it really could be an interesting matchup next week. I think it's got the makings of a good game, I think, at least. So I'm with you two guys on this one. I think it's going to be a real good game. And
just quickly looking back at last year, too, in the conference championships, to start going on this from earlier this year, it was a 38-20 win in the Bills' favor. And these are two different teams, obviously, especially the Chiefs, because they struggled early starting the season. But that was a big factor in Buffalo's success, keeping Kansas City off the field, and they managed to score every quarter as well. Allen threw for 315 yards, 3 touchdowns, and defense was able to get some big stops on him, which was a difference maker from the conference title game a couple years ago, or last year, where it was the inverse, and Kansas City, was on the field a lot. They were moving the ball well, driving down, and Buffalo couldn't really get the offense going for a lot of that game. Josh Allen threw 48 passes in that championship game, and he finished with an interception, a couple touchdowns, and only 287 yards.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's the recipe for them to be successful, right? Him throwing that many times.
Yeah.
Maybe him running that many times, but not passing. Do we want to talk about the Eagles-Bucks game?
Oh, do we ever?
Absolutely.
Because
all right, now get in there.
Well, first off, don't believe the 31-15 score, because the Eagles scored all their points in the fourth quarter. This was
like Giants.
Tampa Bay's game from start to finish.
Right.
And Tom Brady, any rumors of Tom Brady being on the decline, well, first of all, he always steps up for the playoffs. Did it again. 29 for 37, 271 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. But this was a game where the Eagles, had no business being there. I mean, I couldn't believe how dominant a performance it was by the Buccaneers on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I would agree with that. This is how far the distance was between those two teams in my mind. I was watching that game thinking to myself, is Jalen Hurts really going to be the Eagles franchise quarterback? It makes you question that. That's just how dominant, and how long is Tom Brady going to play longer than Jalen Hurts?
Yeah. At this point, Brady's a cyborg, man. But no, it's a great point, because Hurts, especially the second half, expectations that we set on him. But this game, I think, raises a lot of those questions about how far he has to go, how good can he be, especially as a passer when he is facing better opposition. But he had a lot of turnover-worthy plays, and did end up turning the ball over a couple times as well, I believe. And another issue, too, was the ground game, which really got the Eagles to the playoffs. Just wasn't there. They were shut down pretty well. Hurts was the leading scorer at 39 yards, but really outside of Boston Scott, who had 1 carry for 34 yards, nothing going on the Eagles' ground game. And to me, that's the difference maker, because that was their strongest asset. It was, not having to have Hurts be the engine of the offense by himself and having him rely on the ground game. Jake?
Well, I think it's so interesting that you talk about, the Eagles' run game, because obviously that's the matchup everybody's looking at. Tampa has a really good rush defense. Eagles are, a really good team running the football. But they kind of, it sounds like, they kind of hurried Sanders back from injury for this game, which, obviously a lot of teams do when it's some of their top players for the playoffs. But just interesting to me. I know, they kind of got down pretty early at 14-0 in the first quarter, but when you're that kind of team, you can't just, abandon what you do. And I thought it was interesting that guys like Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell only got one carry in this game, and Scott took it to the house on his one carry. These have been key contributors throughout the season for this run game because, Sanders has missed a handful of games. Why not give it to the guys who have been, helping you get into the playoffs these last few weeks of the regular season?
Yeah.
I know Hurts is going to get his, but, you kind of force all the other carries to Sanders just coming off injury. And then you see Scott get his chance. He takes it to the house. You might be thinking, again, late in the game, but you're thinking maybe we should have given him some carries earlier.
Agreed. The loss falls on the Hurts on the offense, but definitely surrounding his coaching staff as well, because to me, he really abandoned what got them to the game in the second half of the season and reverted back to what this Eagles squad tried doing in the first half, where they found virtually no success. Was again going up against pretty good passing defense, with an offensive line to where, they've improved. It's a lot of young guys in their second and third year. They were fine as pass rushers, but they're just constantly overwhelmed at the end of the day, and there's really no space or room for Hurts or the running backs to do anything. And it was a big problem too, especially on the other end where you have Brady. He could have all the time in the world, but he's getting rid of that ball pretty fast, and he's finding a way to get it downfield virtually every play, and just giving it to his slew of receivers like Mike Evans, Gronk, Tyler Johnson.
Yeah, and I'll jump in one more time here for this game and say, give credit to Tampa because, they're coming in with, not their top guys on the depth chart in terms of running backs, and
everywhere.
Keyshawn Vaughn and Giovanni Bernard both come in with a rushing touchdown on the day. They do get over 100 rushing yards. We all know the story on Tom Brady, but it's crazy because either credit Tampa, maybe bad job by the Eagles defense, but it's, Mike Evans, 9 receptions, 117 yards and a touchdown, Gronk with a touchdown. It's like, you'd think those are the guys you're focusing on to limit, especially when you get into the red zone. And these are the guys that are hurting you. And I think you got to give, not that he doesn't get credit enough, but Mike Evans, going up against Darius Slay, he just balled out on him today.
Oh, yeah. 9 catches, 10 targets, 117 yards. Only receiver that had over 50 yards for Tampa, and a touchdown on top of that. Matt.
I'm looking at the highlights right now. I'm watching Mike Evans score a touchdown.
Yeah. But I do want to talk about that, too, before we switch, is how many more and this Bucs team, offense primarily, take. Okay, they have no Leonard Fournette. They have no Ronald Jones. They have, obviously, no Antonio Brown for the season. Chris Godwin, I don't recall his status, but I think he was out in today's game. And now offensively, they had an offensive line, one of the very few teams where they had virtually no offensive line issues during the season. Christian Wirfs got rolled up early. He left the game. Ankle, was it Ryan Kerrigan? No, he's on the other side. Josh Well took over. He had issues as well. A couple other linemen were hurt. They were down. Definitely be an issue there. And just how many blows can this offense take? And I know how good Brady is. He's able to adapt and adjust, especially for receivers and running backs. He controls a lot of that, in terms of that's who he's giving the ball to. His protectors, it's a lot harder to control that. And we saw that in the Super Bowl on the Chiefs side, where they were starting virtually second stringers on every offensive line, and it gave Mahomes no time to do anything. And that ended up being a huge difference maker. And if you're going up against Aaron Donald on the other side of you, or San Francisco 49ers defensive line, having Bosa there, it's not going to be good times for the Bucs offensive line to have second stringers there.
Well, I think they got one team too many for Philly. I agree with Matt's original point. And Philly was just a pretender in this playoff situation. They came in, and I think this week that doesn't matter. Kind of like all the things that you bring up. Does it matter next week? I don't know if they're playing Arizona or the Rams.
I think it has to, especially if you're playing Arizona. Really, if you're facing LA or San Fran, it's definitely going to matter a lot.
Well,
so
let's face it.
It doesn't matter this week, right? So we'll see next week. I think that's,
With
but I think
the
it's a real
Eagles,
good point.
as I said before, it's kind of like a one facing a 16 in the NCAA. The Eagles got in. They were like a mid-major compared to Tampa Bay. And you could also make the argument that was the case in the NFC East all season because, let's see, who's next on the list here for getting clobbered because a lot of these games were one-sided. Oh, yes, the NFC East champion, the Dallas Cowboys, who made it interesting, to their credit, but a little bit deceptive because this was until the final drive of the game, and we'll definitely get into that, all San Francisco.
Yeah, it definitely was. I watched pretty much this whole thing, and it's crazy. I wasn't surprised at all because I knew what San Fran wanted to do. I felt like they wanted to punch them in the mouth and run the ball on them, and I felt like exactly what they did. And it got a little dicey at times. It felt like, as always, when it comes to Niners games, it seems Garoppolo might, throw the game away.
He almost did. Big interception at the end.
But between Mitchell and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk had a good game. They really do. This Niners team punches you in the mouth. They're going to run the ball. They're going to run the ball. And it feels like, 75% of the time, you're not going to do anything about it. And the Cowboys just weren't ready for it.
Yeah, the ground game was a huge winner for San Fran. Deebo Samuel is a huge part of that offense. He a lot of times felt like he was the offense. Even though he carried it 10 times, he still ran for 72 yards, including a touchdown. And the Cowboys had no answer for his versatility as a rusher and as a receiver. So he carried it 27 times, but he still managed to get just under 100 yards on the afternoon. So that dynamic duo was a huge strength in 49ers offense, where outside of them, no one really did too much and really didn't have to do too much against the Cowboys team that I thought really kept shooting themselves in the foot on both ends of the ball.
What I'm looking for is time of possession here, but go ahead.
It felt like it wasn't until the very end of the game when San Francisco decided that they wanted to give the game away.
Yeah.
That Dallas really got anything going. I mean, the interception the Garoppolo throws. And then they they punt the ball. They go off sides when they're going to go for it on 4th and 1. So it forces them to punt the ball. Did they get it there? I could have that wrong. But anyway, they have to punt the ball. And they virtually give them, 60 straight yards.
Yeah.
Just 4 straight passes in a row. They go right downfield. And then Dak Prescott, runs with 14 seconds left, gets the ball to the 20. And they don't have enough time to run another play. But
will it kill these guys? Will it kill these coaches, these quarterbacks to just play a game of Madden once in their life just to figure out how to run a 2-minute offense?
Not only that, what killed them, first of all, we all saw this. The first thing they do is blame the ref for trying to squeeze in and spot the ball too late. If there are 2 ifs. Number 1, the play beforehand was not a great call. Go for the end zone. Number 2, when the play is over, hand the ball to somebody with a striped shirt, because the play can't start until the ball is spotted. They tried to spot it themselves and run the play.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was a nightmare ending, and you brought up a good point about the Niners. They get that false start penalty. They move Trent Williams, in motion before the start of the play, and then they get that false start. They're forced to punt it, and the Cowboys go all the way down the field. And I think the worst part is, I think anybody could tell based off of Dak, pre-snap at the line that it's a total design run. He's telling the lineman, "I'm going to sneak as much as I can, get up to the line so we could spike it and have a better shot at the end zone." And they couldn't even operate it right. They couldn't even.
In a playoff game.
they knew what they were doing. It wasn't like
Yeah.
Dak just did it on his own. You could tell it was designed, and they still, classic Cowboys. It seems like
They forgot something. Something, nobody spotted the ball.
Yeah, and that wasn't a penalty, but I thought it was an indictment on how the Cowboys played today. And it was honestly a miracle they even made it a competitive contest there in that second half. Because they did a lot of self-mutilation, for lack of a better term, just hurting themselves offensively, defensively, giving San Francisco second, third chances, which they converted into points. On the other end, taking away, there was a 30-yard catch CeeDee Lamb had that got taken away because of a hold, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot, 14 penalties. And this is a Cowboys team where they either led the league or they were second in penalties called per game this year. And just the undisciplinedness is really what hurt this team, because they got skill good. They are on both ends of the ball, obviously. And, of the two quarterbacks, up until the last play, I'd argue Dak, I don't know. Both quarterbacks kind of struggled today, but I thought Prescott looked better more often than not, because he wasn't just handing the ball off to Zeke and Pollard. He had his receivers and Schultz, doing things. Schultz had a good game, I thought, 89 yards, 7 catches. But it's just this team could not get out of their own way, and it cost them a spot in the playoffs.
So I have 2 questions. One of them being, do you guys think that Zeke should be getting more action on the ground? And then 2, does Mike McCarthy have a job tomorrow?
It is Jerry in charge, so it's tough to determine that one. But if I were in charge, I wouldn't want anyone that touched the field today on the field again tomorrow. I know how ridiculous that sounds, but I was just in awe of how that final, that I couldn't believe something like that would happen in a professional game. I was like, this is high school or college ball. This is a professional game. What went down happened. It was just, Zeke, he didn't have a great game today, but this season I thought was a great rebound from his last couple seasons where he really struggled. Injury played a big factor in that as well. I definitely think he's someone going forward they could definitely turn to more and, continue to utilize him. He was already a top 10 carrier in the league and top 10 as well in rushing touchdowns with 10 this season. But yeah, he's someone where it surprises me he only had 1,000 yards, because he's definitely someone I could see be a 1,500-yard rusher. Greg.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he needs to get more touches. I would like to see them run the ball a little more effectively than they are, especially when you tout how good their offensive line is, right?
And how good Zeke and Pollard are as well.
Yeah, so I think that they really should give him the ball more. I think it's a really good question whether Mike McCarthy has a job next year or not, right? I didn't think
how
he was
much
going to
of this
survive
is
last
his
year.
fault.
Well, here's what I think is his. Yeah, here's what I think is his fault. And I'm gonna not to play the penalties is his fault.
Yeah,
because I think that's a culture. I think that's a culture thing. You lost the game because you got so many penalties,
and
I think that
the game was winnable without them.
And it's not anything new, because they were among the top teams in penalties drawn, and they just didn't work on it throughout the year, in spite of all the success they found.
A fan of the team or you work for the team, you are wondering what else can possibly go wrong. I mean, how many times in recent years have the Cowboys gone into the playoffs looking pretty good and, people predicting that they'll go deep, and something stupid happens? A blown snap, a misplayed final play on the drive, whatever it is, or multiple penalties. Whatever it is, it always seemed that the Cowboys shot themselves in the foot somehow. And here we go again. Another year. And now the Cowboy fans get to feel what it was like to be a Red Sox fan before 2004. Something going wrong all the time. Now, of course, you have to appreciate the fact that they have a chance of winning it every year. But the futility has to be frustrating. How many of you guys have seen Ted Lasso?
Yeah, I've seen some of it. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Great show.
There's
Great
one
show.
scene where Coach Blond is trying to explain to him the different teams in the Premier League. Mm-hmm. So they get to Liverpool. And Liverpool, once great team, hasn't won in a long time. Oh, Dallas Cowboys. And the fans are really frustrated over it. Dallas Cowboys.
Yep, yep, that's right.
That says it all. I wouldn't be surprised if he was on the chopping block. I just don't know who you replace him with.
Well, yeah, my issue with that is likely it would go to probably the offensive coordinator who has head coaching experience, and Dan Quinn. But you want to talk about guys who are infamous for fumbling away games. Dan Quinn was the guy where they had a 20-3 lead over New England with a quarter and a half to go, and they couldn't even secure that. So replacing one with the other is almost a lateral move in that sense, where, nothing is safe. And
right, yeah.
I show the futility of the NFC East as a whole. They're the first conference out. I'm correct, just out of the playoffs as a whole.
Weird.
And, you had a Giants team with a lot of expectations. Especially towards the end of the season, he was a joke of a coach. Yeah, Washington, they had high expectations, a lot of injuries, they missed out. And the Eagles, who we said, they looked good in the second half, though. And the Cowboys, who had, they had a lot of folks riding on them to go pretty far in the playoffs. And so far, they've been upset by a 6-seed 49ers squad, who wasn't even at 100% for Fred Warner going down at the end of the game.
Well, you talk about potential, head coaching hires for the Cowboys if they do move on from McCarthy. The offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, even though, he is a younger guy, I know he has been getting a lot of talk about, some of the other open head coaching jobs. I'm sure he would love to, take the spot in Dallas. And like you said, bringing up Quinn's last stop in Atlanta as a head coach, I don't know if Jerry Jones wants to take a chance of something like that, even though he has done a very good job turning around this defense. But the thing I keep, having trouble with is when it comes to this Cowboys team, it's like we always hear the offensive line is one of the best in football. You look at the wide receivers on the team, they're incredible. We talk about the running backs. Seems like between Elliott and Pollard, it's a good duo. Dak, he might not be, the top of the top, but I think he's definitely, a good quarterback. And then the defense, it just seems like was all you could talk about this season. So it's like, where do you even, don't get me wrong.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. There's spots where every team can improve, but it's like,
yeah,
they're supposed to be this amazing team. What's the problem? So is it the head coach, in fact, but it seems like it's been happening now for decades. even going back to those Romo teams.
Well, that's the thing. The personalities and names have turned over. By the way, it's Coach Beard, not Coach Blond. I know. I'll go get some shortbread cookies for everybody. But anyway, the big question that we have here is that we know the personnel is good, and we know that this team, as presently constituted, hasn't played together that long. And this is any general manager or an owner/general manager comes to this impasse. I mean, again, wind back the clock 40 years and to a different sport. Bill Torrey and the New York Islanders. The Islanders were in a similar situation where they run up a terrific regular season record and get bounced in the second round of the playoffs. And Bill Torrey is sitting at his desk one day after getting knocked out by the Rangers, of all people, who advanced to the finals. This is in 79. Ended up losing to Montreal. But he's at an impasse. Do I stick with this team as presently constituted one more year, or do I blow it up? He made the conscious decision to stick with him one more year, and it resulted in 4 straight Stanley Cups. So this is an impasse. Even when a guy like Brian Cashman, this has happened to him a lot, where he hasn't made changes or maybe too late and hurt the Yankees, or made changes too soon. So year too early, year too late. And let's face it, Jerry Jones has been known for his impatience. I think maybe he should just not listen to the critics this time and maybe stick with them one more year, because the Giants aren't getting any better. The Eagles, we showed what they can do, nothing. The Washington football team, let them find a name first. They're going to win the division next year. Give it another shot. Give this team another chance to gel. But you have to address the immediate problems. Too many penalties. Too many youthful mistakes. As this team matures, makes fewer mistakes, you hope. But I don't think it's time to blow it up just yet.
Well, the one thing I'll say, coming off of that is just, I wonder, you got, guys like Lyle Collins on the offensive line, Tyron Smith. These guys are starting to get older. It seems like they're always injured throughout the season. It's like,
well, then you make decisions on their replacements, no doubt about that.
Well, you do that. But also, too, this is a division where it seems like no matter what, it's always a different winner of the division the next year. No team can win it 2 years in a row. And even though it looks like it should be obvious with the way the other teams are kind of set up in that division, it just kind of feels like for some reason that the Cowboys might not win the division next year.
Well, they seem to eke it out. But we think we've established, after watching a full season of this again, that the Cowboys are the best team in their division.
So I'm going to agree with that. I think that it probably is the right move is to keep them. I do think on paper they're the most talented team in the division, so you really feel like they could win it. And you see what they can do. Can they correct those mistakes? And I also think there's penalties in their penalties. You're going to go offsides. You're going to have some encroachments and things like that. But at the wrong time, those are the ones you have to eliminate as well too, right? The ones that just blow up the game on you. You have to eliminate those. I think that it's where else you're going to go. I don't know if there's a coach out there that you're you're pining for right now. That
a lot of
you're
openings
just
out there.
There's too many openings. I think probably.
Almost half the league is at this point.
Yeah, I think it's a quarter of the teams are
right now, quarter
looking for coaches or have an interim head coach. So, if you want to go in the head coaching things, were we surprised at Joe Judge getting fired?
No, thank goodness.
No. I don't think we're friends on social media yet, Greg, but I did put a couple of comments up there. Comment number 1 was Ray Hanley's record as Giants coach, the 2 years he was there, was 14-18, and Judge's was 10-23. Now, to be fair, Hanley had a much better team, had just won a Super Bowl, and the fact that it underachieved was one of the reasons why fans soured on him so quickly. But Ray Hanley, until now, was a poster child for, or the dictionary definition, I should say, of bad Giants coach. And then you look at this disaster. Now, again, not entirely of Judge's creation, but if you're going to hire a new general manager, you want the general manager to pick a coach. Now, way back when, after, I think it was when Jim Fossil got hired and Reeves got fired, Wellington Mara was talking to a couple of reporters and explained how the procedure went with the Giants for hiring coach. They said the general manager recommends the hire and the owners do the hiring. Whatever kind of protocol they want to use is fine, but they need a GM first. And then the GM has to hire a coach that fits with the GM's philosophy. But the big question we have right now is still got to start with the GM, and there are no obvious choices out there that I know of. What do you think?
For the GM, I have no idea. That's not like a wheelhouse that I feel comfortable with. I think that the guy from the Dolphins is the coach that they should be targeting right now. Like I just the turnaround that he did for that team. There's something that he had going with those guys that makes me feel like that's something that the Giants need.
Yeah, the turnaround was good. The play was good, I thought, especially that second half. My only issue is if you're still trying to build this team under Daniel Jones, it seems like Flores isn't going to shy away from throwing him under the bus because that happened a whole lot. Even while the Dolphins were on a roll with Tua Tagovailoa, it honestly took me by surprise because it seemed like they were a great fit, and the offense they were able to adjust and adapt the offense to make it work. And for a guy like Jones who plays a bit similar, he's faster than Tua, sure, but he plays similar offense. The play style might be able to fit. Time when it goes south, you want your coach to have your back and not throw you under the bus, which him and Zimmer seem to do a lot during the season.
Yeah, you always wonder what the coach's motivation is when they do something like that. Are they trying to send a message to a player and you don't know what that message is when they do something like that? And I think that would be the question. That was just my thought on it. I don't know. Who do you guys think for the Giants?
Well, I think when it comes to the GM search, I know the last time they were looking, Louis Riddick was in the talks. It doesn't sound like his name has been talked about as much for the Giants this time around. But it sounds like I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce the last name, but Joe Schuin, I think, is the Bills' assistant GM. It sounds like he's been getting been talked a lot, at least in the news.
Well, that's what I like too. Assistant GMs, people in the system, so to speak, are really the ones you want to look at because you don't want to retread somebody else. You want somebody who's an up and coming program and had a role in building it. The Bills are a perfect example. They've replaced the Patriots as the class of that division. And after all their years of utility too.
I even add a different team also in the Kansas City Chiefs, where you remember they were a team that was on the fence, struggled. They got Brett Veach in 2017, and all of a sudden you see these great picks and these great players, and now that team has stars like Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Frank Clark, and we saw what they did today, most likely ending Ben Roethlisberger's career, ending the Steelers season and going on to advance in what was a pretty non-competitive contest after the second quarter, just because of, some great GM moves, as well as obviously getting the right players and the right system in place.
Well, the funny thing is, we mentioned earlier that if Pittsburgh kept the pressure on the KC defense and kept them on the field, their chances would be good. That didn't happen. KC, again, another one-sided game. And you know what? I mentioned earlier that Roethlisberger was playing, especially the fourth quarter, like it was the last game of his life, and it may very well be. But it seemed like every drive the Steelers were on, despite how far behind they were, where they were trying to win the game, which I like. And you just watch them, and you watch a guy who knows the clock is ticking, that this could be it. I may never do this again. And while we've been talking on the show, I've had it on here on the monitor, and it was really interesting to watch, because you start to think of, if I were in that position, my last hurrah, how would I be handling it? Probably the same.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. It's clearly, it hasn't been the best year for Big Ben at all. But it does seem like in a lot of these games, win or lose, and lose close or lose big, it seems like on every drive they have, there's at least one ball that he throws perfectly that just goes right through the hands of one of his receivers. And of late, it's been Deontay Johnson. It seemed like it happened once or twice early in this game when, the defense was kind of keeping them in it. And, you can't blame that on Ben. I know he's getting older and he does make, his own mistakes, but, when he puts it right where it needs to be, a guy like Johnson or Claypool or, even Smith-Schuster was back tonight, you got to make that catch. And, a lot of times you got to get, some of these first downs to, like you said, keep that Chiefs offense on the sideline and also give your defense a break. I mean, it seemed like TJ Watt was single-handedly keeping them in that game early on.
Then you're at an impasse in your career. If Roethlisberger thinks he can still play like Tom Brady, he has to know that, that he can't be an impediment to the team's progress. And like you said, I don't think he is. I think that there are other pieces that the Steelers need to put in place, and they barely made the playoffs this year. So does it get worse with them next year? And if it does get worse with him next year and Roethlisberger's still in there, he's going to get blamed for all of it. But then there's the other thing with any veteran player, like Brady, for example. Most of the time, the player knows when it's time to quit. And you know what the two reasons are. Either can't do it physically or no longer want to do it mentally.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I know we got to get into the NBA a little bit, but I will pose the question: who do you guys like for the Monday night playoff game? I'll tip my cap to the Cardinals. I like the Cardinals.
Yeah, I'll combat. I'll go Rams just because, especially the past couple weeks, and they're both pretty good teams, no question about it. Two great quarterbacks, Murray and Stafford. I love watching them play. But just, ranking-wise, the Rams defense is tremendous. It's tough for me to bet a team that has Aaron Donald defensively, offensively as well, just seeing how dynamic the offense was. They had a tough loss against San Fran last week, obviously, but San Fran showed they're not pretenders. They're here to be taken seriously, and the Rams, maybe they learned something from that.
Yeah, I am going to go. I'm going to go with the Rams myself. It's funny. As a fan, I love the Monday night game. If I was coaching, I would hate this Monday night game because I think it's such a disadvantage after the game is over. It's such a disadvantage for the loser, right? Mm-hmm. Of the game. So if whoever wins, the Rams or the Cards, I think it's such a disadvantage for them. But even though they lost to San Francisco, I did like the way that they played against San Francisco. I just like their offensive attack. I think they got a lot of weapons, and I don't think the Cards are going to be able to match that.
Also, if there's no Hopkins, no JJ Watt, it's really tough for me, to go towards the Cardinals. James Conner's questionable. They got to hope he's in.
Well,
they're missing Robert Woods, but still.
It does sound like, I know he was activated off of IR. It does sound like Watt is going to play, at least from what I saw. But you know what it is for me? I just feel like I could see this being like a close game.
Agreed.
And I don't know who's going to have the lead, when it comes to crunch time, but it feels like there is a mountain on Stafford's shoulders. And if he has to, lead a drive late, I just.
That's fair. Yeah.
It feels like, he's bound to make a mistake. Now, granted, who knows? They might have the lead early and, ride it. But
first time these teams played, Cards won, let's have it here, 38-20, I believe, 37-20, and it was Cards virtually all the way. Teams faced a couple weeks, or rather in December 13, Rams won 30-23. So, it was two different games there. Agreed. It could go either way. This is definitely the coin flip of all the games this week for sure.
Yeah, I think a big during the season addition for the Cards was Zach Ertz. I think he's been Murray's kind of go-to target since Hopkins went down for sure. I think he could have a pretty big game tomorrow night.